Alif Lam Mim. And then you have what's called the Mad al-Lazim al-Harfi here. So the Mujawwidun have a mnemonic that they give, which is Kam Asal Naqas, how much of the Asal has diminished. So those are the Kaf, the Mim, the Ain, the Sin, the Lam, the Noon, the Qaf, and the Sad. So those all have the Med, which is Sit Harakat. So when you recite the Huruf al-Muqatta'at, the ones Hayy Tahir, those have just the normal med, but these have 6. So Alif has the normal med, Alif Lam Mim. And what do they mean? Well, what's interesting about the Huruf al-Muqatta'at, I mean, to me, what fascinates me, and I haven't seen this in the tafsir, but all of the mufassirun are in agreement that they mean something. What they mean is, they say Allahu Alam. Some of them, and Ibn Abbas is one of them, said that they're actually letters that indicate words. So for instance, the Arabs in Jahiliyyah, the Arabs, one of the things that Ibn Ashur says in his Tahrir wa Tanwir, which is a great tafsir, one of the things he says in there is that he said the Arabs were known for their intelligence. They're very brilliant people, and they had an incredible gift with words. And one of the things that they did was they would speak with letters. So for instance, and they give the example, and this is from Az-Zajjaj, the great grammarian. He says, it's not far-fetched that these are literally words, because the Arabs would say things like, قُلْتُ لَهَا قِفِي فَقَالَتْ لِي قَافٍ. So I said to her, stop, so she said qaf, which means waqaftu. So she used a letter to say a word. So some of them say, like Alif Lam Mim is Ana, Allah, A'lamu. Like, and some say it's Allah, Jibril. So the Lam is for Jibril, and then Mim is for Muhammad. These are all, you'll find them in the commentaries. Ibn Arabi and Ibn Ashur mentions this. Ibn Arabi actually says that they're names of angels. And so when you say them, the angels respond because they want to hear the Quran recited. So it's like calling angelic presence, because the Prophet ﷺ said that the angels want to hear the Quran, and they actually travel the earth. Just like we look up at the sky and see stars, the angels look at the earth and they see places where dhikr is being made. Those are like stars for them, and then they'll go to those places. So the muqatta'at are very important. People have attempted to see how many of the muqatta'ats, how many sentences you could get from them, and there's only a few, but one of them is, that has all the muqatta'at, is Nassun Hakimun Qati'un Lahu Sir. This is a absolute nas, a text from God that is wise, and there's a secret in it. So that contains all of the muqatta'at. There are 14 letters in the muqatta'at. They show up in 29 surahs. Now what's interesting about that is it's half of the Arabic letters, and yet the number of surahs they're in is the number of Arabic letters there are. And so it's almost as if when the Quran is coming into language, because we have to remember that the eternal Quran, that when we talk about Al-Quran Al-Qadim, and I'm only using this as a ta'lim because generally the ulama say this should not be said unless you're teaching. When we say the Quran is Kalamullah Al-Qadim, it is the eternal word of God. It is not the letters or the mushaf that we have here. It's the eternal meanings. And it's as if here you have these letters are taking form as they come into meaning. And one of the things, and I'll talk about this inshallah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, تَلَقَّى آدَمُ مِنْ رَبِّهِ كَلِمَاتٍ. There's a qira'ah of Ibn Kathir, it says تَلَقَّى آدَمَ. So Adam is maf'ulun bihi, it's actually the object of that. مِنْ رَبِّهِ كَلِمَاتٌ. And so the kalimat is the marfu' because it's in that case, it's actually the fa'il. So it's saying, and the power of this is that meaning is there are two things happening in meaning. There's meaning coming to you, and then there's meaning that you are perceiving. So what those two qira'at indicate is that meaning is not limited to a perspectival approach. In other words, it's not subjective. This is the whole modern philosophical madness, that everything is just in your head, that there's nothing that you can know except what's in your head. What that ayah is indicating in its two qira'at is that there is a relational, there is a relation between meaning, which is real, and between the one who is decoding the meaning, who is also real. And it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's facilitating that through this extraordinary bringing these two things together, which is this world that He's created, that is all of His tajalliyat, and then the human being, which is divinely created in order to recognize all of the attributes and the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation as this incredible epiphany of divine reality, that Allah is revealing Himself to His creation through the alam, through the world. The alam in Arabic is called ismu ala. It's the noun of instrument. So the world is an instrument to know God. That's why it's from the root alima, which is to know. So the world is the means by which Allah is enabling us to know Him. And so it comes into language, and language, according to many of our ulama, is tawqifiyya. When Allah said, "Allama Adam al-asma," that He taught Adam the names, it meant that God gave us, He's imprinted in us the ability to articulate reality, and that our articulation of it, if it's true, it corresponds with reality. If it's false, it doesn't. And so this is the book. It begins Alif Lam Mim Dhalikan Kitab, and then the book comes, the meanings come to us. That book, La Raib Fihi Hudan lil Muttaqin, or La Raiba Fihi Hudan lil Muttaqin. And this is the beauty of this. This is the nature of the wuquf. And one of the most amazing things about the Quran to me, the wuquf are ijtihadiyah. So there are some wuquf that you can't stop on by consensus. But many of the wuquf, there are different ways that you can stop, and it'll change the meaning completely. And so there's this inexhaustible potential for meaning in the Book of Allah. And this is why Arabic was so important to be the vehicle for this last message, because Arabic is uniquely positioned amongst the languages to contain all of these possibilities. And that's why it's inexhaustible. Muslims will always find new meanings in the Book of Allah. Somebody asked Ibn Umar what was the best what was the best way to understand the Quran. He said time. It's just time is going to reveal all of the miracles of this book. And so fihi huda lil muttaqin, in it is guidance for the conscientious. But one of the things I want to just say about the muqatta'at before we go on, and this is really amazing. The people of Tajweed are going to appreciate this, and if you don't get it, don't worry, but just understand it really is something extraordinary. So Ibn Ashur quotes the Kashaf, which is the great book by the famous Mu'tazili scholar Zamakhshari. It's a book that all of our great scholars recognize as being an exemplary book, despite having some problems in some of the tafsir. But it was later basically rewritten for the Sunni tradition by Imam al-Baydawi. I mean, he took most of what was in the Kashaf and rewrote it for. So more students learned from Imam al-Baydawi's commentary than they did. But the Kashaf is a really important book because it's a rhetorical analysis of the Quran. But he says here in the Kashaf, ما ورد في هذه الفواتح. They're called أوائل السور and they're also called فواتح السور. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said that لكل كتاب سر وسر القرآن فواتح السور. Every book has a secret, and the secret of the Quran is these opening letters of the huruf al-hijab. So he says, من أسماء الحروف هو نصف أسامي حروف المعجم. So it's half of the names of these huruf that we have, these letters. إذ هي 14. So there's 14 that are found in the huruf al-muqatta'a. And then he gives them. وهي الألف واللام والميم والصاد والراء والكاف والها والياء والعين والطاء والسين والحاء والقاف والنون. And then he says في 29 سورة على عدد حروف المعجم. And they're in 29 chapters based on the number of the letters in totality. So all of the meanings, these inexhaustible meanings of the Quran, are in 29 letters. Half of those letters are in 29 surahs. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. So he says that those 14 contain half of all of the attributes of the huruf. So all of the attributes of the huruf are there in those 14, but only half of them. So what that means is, so like for instance, you have mahmusa, nisfuha, الصاد والكاف والها والسين والحاء. So that's half of the mahmusa. So the mahmusa letters, these are the attributes of the hams. So then he says the majhura has half. الألف واللام والميم والراء والعين والطاء والقاف والياء والنون. من الشديدة نصفها الألف والكاف والطاء والقاف. ومن الرخوة نصفها اللام والميم والراء والصاد والهاء والعين والسين والحاء والياء والنون. ومن المطبقة نصفها الصاد والطاء. ومن المنفتحة نصفها الألف واللام والميم والراء والكاف والهاء والعين والسين والقاف والياء والنون. ومن المستعلية نصفها القاف والصاد والطاء. ومن المستفلة نصفها الألف واللام والميم والراء والكاف والهاء والياء والعين والسين والحاء والنون. ومن حروف القلقلة نصفها القاف والطاء. Right? So that's the قطب جد. Right? So he's saying that you have there القاف والطاء. ثم إن الحروف التي ألغى ذكرها مكثورة بالمذكورة. فسبحان الذي دقت في كل شيء حكمته. So he says they're all mentioned. The ones that aren't there are throughout the entire Quran. And he said, glory be to the one whose wisdom is so refined. So that's something really unusual about those, because I just can't imagine somebody would have ever sat and worked all that out. But this is called milh al-ilm. You know, it's like the salt, but it's very fascinating. One of the things that some of the arifin said is that Allah gives openings to these letters to the people the closer you get to Allah. In fact, Ibn Ashur says something really beautiful. He says that Allah has the oceans of knowledge, and the prophets are the valleys, and the scholars are the rivers. And so Allah gives from His oceans of knowledge the valleys to the prophets. فَسَالَتْ أَوْدِيَتُهَا. Right? أَنزَلْنَا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً. So the water comes, and then the prophets give to the ulama. Al-ulama warathatul anbiya. So they inherit from the prophets from the valleys of water, not the oceans, because they can't contain the oceans. They can't contain the valleys, but they get the rivers, and then they become the rivulets for the common people, the people that don't. They become like, they give just enough for them to get their sustenance. So each group is getting a different amount of water, the amount that they can take without drowning.